hope that you can see me and hear me well. Please do notify me on the chat if you can at least, see me or hear me. Great. Thank you, Georgie. It's really great to be here. Good morning, Brazil. Good afternoon from us here, from this side of the world in Europe. This seminar is broadcasted from Greece, where I'm based. And it's a great pleasure to be here among the Brazilian teachers, one of my favorite, let's say, group of people, since I have come to this country many times, and every time that I deliver a presentation in front of Brazilian teachers, it's always a pleasure. My name is George Kokolas. I'm the Academic Director of Express Publishing at a global level. And I also do, some other things as well. I'm an editor in two English language teaching magazines. I'm, of course, a teacher trainer, international presenter. And lately, yes, I can start claiming that, yes, I am a positive psychology practitioner in education. Something, of course, it's a journey for me that has started 2 years ago. And I try to enrich it as much as possible, trying to become more practical. Today, we're going to talk about motivation. And this is a talk that has been presented in quite a few conferences. It's a brand new talk this year, and it's going to be presented in even more. It's one of my favorites because it includes a lot of aspects from motivation, from psychology, from positive psychology. And I think, I find it really useful to share this information with you. So as to give you a little bit more time to accommodate yourselves, I will try to share my screen so we can start becoming more specific about today's topic, and of course, start the presentation, today's presentation. Okay, let's see. Come on. Why my mouse is not working. Sorry. It seems I'm so sorry. I hope that you can still hear me. Okay, thank you, Georgie. Let me try to share the presentation again. It's always these funny things happening. And I guess now you will be able to see everything. Okay, Georgie, because I cannot see the chat, if you can actually send me a WhatsApp and tell me that everything is fine, so I can start and that people see me. Okay, excellent. So, mastering motivation mechanism is today's topic. And obviously, you may be wondering, who am I to talk about motivation at this specific moment? And I literally understand this question because this is something that I was asking myself. Well, the first thing is that I consider myself, and I would always like to be in the front line of this particular function as someone who is a facilitator. And a facilitator can be a teacher for your students, for its students. It can be someone who is a trainer. It can be someone who has the floor to talk to people. And as a facilitator, I think it's my obligation and duty to create awareness about many different topics. As long as you code well and as you are well studied about what you are talking, I think this creates this awareness to people and to teachers. And the 21st century teacher needs to be aware of different things, of different fields, of different aspects, because exactly this is what is happening in today's classes. We may face difficulties, and this is the second reason why I'm giving this talk, that may not be solved or could not be solved simply with decent, good methodology. There might be problems that require somebody, to come in, a specialist, and address the problem. We must be aware so to offer a diagnosis. We must be aware so to be able to spot the problem and talk to its core when the time comes. And obviously, talking about the 21st century teacher, this in a way describes the profile. You are aware of something and you decide to research a little bit more. I will never pretend that you will learn everything about motivation today in 45 minutes or 40 minutes, but definitely you may get some ideas that might be helpful so you can research further. I'm going to provide all the sources here, everything that it's there on the internet. It's up to you whether you feel that something really fits your classroom. And there is a third reason, and the third reason has to do that motivation is something that you need in your everyday life. Motivation is a life pattern. It's a school pattern. It's something that that it's everywhere. And this allows me, to move on to the next slide, which is a proof of what I'm trying to say. It's a recurring life pattern. Daddy, can you please help me with my homework? Sweetie, can you please tidy up your room? Honey, would you please do the washing up for me today? Could you please take my dog? Can you please stop bringing food in the classroom? You can see that constantly, every single day, we are asking people to do things for us, and vice versa. No matter if we're talking about our children, our parents, or when I say vice versa, when they try to ask something from us. So this kind of motivation pattern and maybe the skills that we need to have, could be something that can be taught, can be held aware of, for everybody, and something that it requires some practice. This is the main reasons why I would like to talk to you today about motivation, and I hope that you get something useful out of it. I will start with the basics and try to define the correlation of motivation to our brains. And when I say the basics, I mean motivation is an emotion, so motivation lies in the limbic system. And the limbic system, I'm not the first one who is mentioning this, of course, and you do really know it, refers to any kind of emotions that we may be experiencing. Also, the limbic system, which also has part the amygdala, is what helps us and connects us with other people. It, in a way, defines our relationships. And of course, there is a third reason that is also related to motivation. The limbic system is responsible for our autorun functions. Remember, our brain loves what is real and personal, and it really loves routines. Every time you bring a new challenge into the brain, every time it faces some kind of difficulty and deviates from the routine that it's used to perform, the brain usually reacts. And when the brain reacts or becomes a little bit uneasy, then it might not be susceptible for learning. It might not be ready for learning. So these auto-run functions, if they are disturbed in a certain context, they may cause also lack of motivation. We have to be a little bit cautious. I will let the experts to explain what I'm trying to say, and I'm going to quote from Daniel Goleman. Actually, this video is not created by him, but refers to theories which firstly were made popular by him. The idea of emotional intelligence was mentioned many years before Goleman started talking about it. But Goleman also talked a lot about the amygdala hijack. Now, I know that because of this platform, I won't be able to share the sound, but you will be able to watch this short video with subtitles. And I'm sure that you are going to get the message. In other words, every time we snap, every time we feel agitated, every time we feel angry, every time there is something that we find provocative or disrupts this balance of emotions, is what we call amygdala hijack, is what makes us deviate from the routine, from the regular, from what, we want to do. And this causes this hassle sometimes and this noise. Sometimes we may lose control because of that. Sometimes, the most important thing which was mentioned on the video was also that we may lose the ability of thinking rationally. And it's what many other psychologists like Colin McIntyre was saying, that's the idea of self-regulation, how we manage to regulate emotions and reason, emotions and reason. This is, a constant pattern that happens to all the people. And of course, it's much more complicated than we're mentioning. But this is the basic function why it is happening. This is the first thing that we know. And the second thing that we know, my friends, and what concerns us as teachers, is that when this amygdala hijack is happening, learning stops. Learning cannot occur. You cannot inspire or teach a brain which is agitated, which is nervous, any kind of knowledge. So our first job as teachers is when we see this kind of energy, of this bad energy, to try to calm down the brain somehow, because it's impossible for anyone to learn when he is under these particular states. I find this is a very important idea. It starts from the limbic system and maybe can stand as the bedrock for motivation. Started becoming a little more specific. I come from a generation, I'm 49 years old, I come from a generation, I don't know if that was the same thing that was happening in Brazil, that it was raised always with this motive, with this pattern of the reward. Study hard so you can find a good job and get a lot of money. Do this and you will get that. Do this task and you will see how popular you are going to become. There was always a reward down the road, which obviously, yes, it might provide some kind of motivation, but to tell you the truth, today, in a completely different world, and after all these advancements, it might be too naive or maybe too little for the brain of a 21st century learner. Maybe motivation, after all, is not only about rewards. And there is another thing that I would like you to think of. Obviously, maybe you are here because you want to find out how fast can you motivate someone, which is a question that for some people may take an entire life to be answered, even our own people. You know, I'm still investigating the people around me to find out what exactly could motivate them or what exactly they would like so to be happy and more positive. However, there is a second question that I do know the answer. Do you know how fast can you demotivate someone? Motivation may take a life, but demotivation may literally take milliseconds. It takes one word. It takes one look. It takes one single action to literally crush someone's motivation. And this is something that we as teachers should have in mind. Because if and when this is happening, then we may be leading to the amygdala hijack that we saw a while ago. That is why this is not an academic term, this is my term, and I inspired it from Darth Vader. That's why I have, his photo here. Well, this is a talk with many allusions and many connections and references to cinema. So I hope that you will enjoy it as much as I do. I usually like to create this kind of anchor so people can remember the information easier. The dark side of motivation. And I'm saying the dark side because there is this thin line in those 4 different ideas that you can see on the slide and we are going to see together, that if you cross it, you may get from the bright side to the dark side, sometimes without even realizing it. It's a pitfall. We're talking about pitfalls here and things that I have experienced several times and without even realizing how I may be harming or how this may be affecting some of my students' motivation. Sometimes I wasn't even aware that I was actually doing this. Let's have a look at them one by one. The first one is the curse of knowledge. And again, without a sound, but with subtitles, and I hope that you are going to get the message, I would like you to see a clip from a movie. It's one of my favorite movies. And I'm sure that you will understand immediately what I'm talking about when I say the curse of knowledge. Sorry about that. Let me stop it. Yes, this is from a movie called A Star in the Sky. It's an Indian movie. It's a Bollywood movie, but it's amazing, by Tariq Khan, one of the best Bollywood stars. And it's actually the story of him being dyslexic. But I highly recommend it, the movie, by the way, even for educational purposes, if you want to watch it. As you can see, we have a teacher here who is reciting grammar rules, and he recites them like being in a competition. And he does expect from its students to know or understand after his recitation of these, rules. And I do think that this specific teacher suffers from the curse of knowledge. The curse of knowledge is something which was defined and coined by Elizabeth Newton back in the 90s in Stanford University. She made an experiment with the tappers and the listeners. She was tapping a particular melody like this, and very few of the students could actually guess it. It was Happy Birthday. Only 3 out of 120 students could actually recognize Happy Birthday, because Mrs. Newton, while she was playing the tune on her mind, she was assumingly, in a false way, that the students also play the same tune on their minds, which was not the case. In other words, my friends, sometimes once we know something, we find it hard to imagine what it was like not to know it. And we always need to be in our learner's shoes for that. This is exactly what is happening when sometimes at the office you call an IT guy and you are asking why this is happening in my computer. And they start this jargon, mambo, jumbo dialect that, they can only understand, and they assume that you understand as well, which is never the case. Or when you have someone who is super academic in our context, that stands in front of people and starts talking about his dissertation or his research, but he's not using the appropriate words that will make a teacher understand how this can be useful in his everyday life or teaching practice. This is the curse of knowledge, and this is one of the pitfalls and traps that I would highly recommend that to avoid. Just because you know something, never assume that your students know it as well, because in the majority of the times, this is not the case. A second idea of the dark side of motivation that I would like to share is what you can see on the screen: instrumental motivation versus the fear of failure. Now, what do we mean by instrumental motivation? We mean that we have a goal, and that's why we orchestrate, that's why we gather up, that's why we plan all our gestures and movements in order to achieve this particular goal. It has a lot to do, a little bit, a similar idea with the rewarding idea. However, there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, if you have a goal and you are thinking about your goal and you want to achieve it, you can actually do whatever is within, of course, the ethical and moral limits, and in order to achieve it. However, this exact idea of instrumental motivation, it might be a knife that cuts both ends. Think about, let's say that you have a student that wants to pass a very important exam. Okay, he may actually be very, very well prepared about this, and he may study a lot of time, spend a lot of time regarding that. He may have a very, very healthy competition with his students as well, and he may also seek the support of the people around him. However, the very same reasons, that is preparation, competition, support, could be the reasons for him to feel demotivated, because all these may also create a fear of failure. What if I don't have time to prepare, or the time is not enough, or I cannot concentrate? So my focusing on the goals, it's not becoming a motive, it becomes, something that really puzzles me. Or within this competitive context, I face such harsh competition, and sometimes hits under the belt from my classmates. How do I handle this? Okay, am I ready to face this? Or I'm expecting some support from my friends and family, but I do not get it. This may automatically, these very three same reasons may create a fear of failure. And we have to be very, very careful, because we think that just because, again, there is a reward, it's about the first idea I was telling you before, that everything will have the problem sorted. Sometimes, no. And if you want to see, unfortunately, this does not have subtitles, but if you want to go to YouTube and actually Google the most motivating speech ever, in the history of cinema was this particular one from the movie Glengarry Glen Ross with Alec Baldwin and Jack Lemmon. And the story is about this real estate office. And Alec Baldwin is a sales manager, and he goes to the office in order to motivate and boost the sales. And he gives, you know, the most demotivating speech in the history of cinema, because obviously he gives them some rewards, but the way he speaks that, the way, you know, his body, his movement, his tone, he's even insulting these people, it's totally demotivating, even though he does talk about some motivating things. It's amazing, and it's exactly, I think, it nails this specific idea. Now, the next idea can be found in another movie, as you can see, The Last Castle with Robert Redford. But it comes from one of my favorite psychologists. Actually, he's a behavioral economist, Dan Ariely, and he was the one who defined the concept of Sisyphic condition. Now, Sisyphic condition, I don't know if you know the story of Sisyphus. He comes from my country, from this country. And according to the Greek mythology, Sisyphus was such a sinner that he was punished by the gods to carry this huge rock upwards, uphill. And once he was actually reaching the top of the hill, the rock would actually fall again, and he would have to repeat this circular task every single day and night. And some people were actually wondering, where is the torture here? Is it because of the physical strength required? Is it because this is happening maybe under extreme weather conditions? But what is really remarkable is that the torture is not about the task itself, but it's about the lack of meaning in this task. And it's exactly the same idea that you can see in The Last Castle. I don't know if you've seen any prison movies, that if the guards want to torture the prisoners, this is also a very usual image. Those of you who like the Lucky Luke comics in the Far West, that was another idea practiced there. They were asking the prisoners or the person who was captive or under a lot of stress of pressure to dig a hole in the ground. And when they were finishing the digging, they were throwing all the soil back in the pit, in the hole, like there was no meaning to what they were doing. There has to be something in this circle of futile work that might be really depressing and very torturing. And if we are to transfer this into our students, in our classes, or in our everyday lives, every time you are repeating something and you don't know why you are doing it, as part of your routine or simply because you are ticking the boxes, that's not very good. Because this eventually will lead you to a dead end and wondering yourself why you are doing it. And my point is, let's eliminate Sisyphic condition tasks from our classes. Never ever ask the students to do something without a purpose, without a meaning, without a connotation, without a goal. What I'm trying to say is this has to be almost every day, every moment evident from your end and from your lesson. Otherwise, if this is a repeating and recurring pattern, it may cause problems and bad feelings to your students. The next idea comes from another favorite of psychologist of mine, Mr. Matthew Lieberman, who has actually managed to tell us that emotional pain equals physical pain. And I will let the video again explain, because there are very good subtitles and the scientist himself can actually tell you more about this. So what have we got here? Every time we feel some physical pain, and every time we feel some pain from loss, rejection, or something negative, the same part of our brains are activated. So yes, it's exactly as this sentence is showing to us. Physical pain equals to emotional pain. So every time we hurt somebody just because we don't realize, by saying something or insulting or maybe offending or hurting his feelings, the very same amount of pain that he feels is like when he breaks his leg. The same part of the brain is activated. I find this a little bit creepy, but at the same time very, very useful finding, not idea, it's a finding, because this is exactly a fact, and how sensitive this can become, can make our daily interactions. Let's start, thinking now about something more positive and leave the dark side and try to go into the second part and the final part of this presentation, which has to do with the bright side. And I'm going to quote maybe from the biggest philosopher of modern philosophy, of the new era of philosophy, Friedrich Nietzsche, who says, maybe at the end of the day, life's greatest rewards spring from our experience of adversity, which gives me a glimpse that maybe, we are looking for happiness, motivation, or positive feelings, do positive things. But maybe those things are somehow hidden within adversity or negative things. Or maybe what he means is that we first need to embrace negativity in order to find positivity and maybe motivation, which, by the way, is the starting position of positive psychology. But I will, simplify the things for you. I don't have access to the chat, but maybe actually it's a rhetorical question. Let's say that you are somewhere in a tropical island, you are with your partner, you have a couple of caipirinhas in your hand, tropical sun, the summer is coming for you, winter is coming from us, so you are in a very good position and you have a great advantage. So let's say that everything is paid, there is no financial commitment that you may have or obligation regarding this vacation. And you can stay and spend as much time as you wish. For how long? For how long you think you can stay by the sea enjoying these things that you can see in the picture? Usually some people say for 3 days, for 4 days, others say even a week, some others say even a month maximum. But I haven't come across one single person saying that he would actually do this forever. Why? Because it's boring. And because you have everything that you wish for, you have money, you have the people next to you, you are enjoying everything, but it's not creative and challenging at all. And eventually, even this tropical paradise may at the end of the day sound or becomes depressing or not interesting. And of course, as a continuation to Nietzsche, Viktor Frankl, who was also a Holocaust survivor, said that life is never made unbearable by circumstances, only by lack of meaning and purpose. Now, this is one of the major ideas that I want you to have in your mind today when you leave this room. That when you are doing things that have no meaning and purpose, and you realize this, then things start becoming tough. Negative feelings knock on your door, and you should be the ones who define this meaning and purpose. It's completely personal, but in our context and in ELT, I think that there might be some ways that we can provide some bridges that can pave the way and hopefully define the meaning of meaning. Now, these are some ideas that I will discuss with you very quickly. The first thing has to do with meaningful lessons. As I said before, in every single occasion, there has to be very, very clear why you are teaching this. And the obvious question that comes and crosses your students' minds is, why am I coming to your class? What's the point of that? Why am I here? And the most obvious answer that you can provide is that you're coming here because you need to be able to communicate in English, spread your wings, go out and, fight or meet the world, interact with the world. That's one of the meaningful ideas that should be present since, for me, day one. Ask your students completely to practice speaking, practice everyday English, show them the meaning of the lesson. All the rest, the tests, grammar, passive knowledge exercises, can be like an orchestra, can be like a bedrock for communication. So for me, promoting communication is #1 must. And of course, you will see later on that this should come always with the right scaffolding and with the right guidelines. This is what makes you as a teacher, is a process. Okay, obviously everybody practices speaking, and everybody, has this as a goal or as an objective. But somehow signposting this all the time through your whole being, through your whole expression, through your whole lesson, it makes it even more meaningful for your students. That is why it has to be evident that you come to my class, and after a while, you will be able to start communicating in English. By the way, and because we need to honor our sponsor as well, every single example I'm using on this book comes from a brand new book, which is called New Upload US, and it's been launched already in Brazil. Georgie said she can give you more information about this and Disal, and it does really support not only the ideas of motivation, but also of a very, very solid methodology that can definitely help you towards this direction. The second positive idea that I would like to discuss is this idea of creation and connection. And I will let Dan Ariely explain this to you, who is, again, one of the experts and one of the persons who generated this idea, and then I will simply supplement it. That's exactly the idea. I don't know if you have ever happened to you buy something from IKEA. It's a nightmare. Once I wanted, to impress my wife, and I started assembling, a very small round coffee table. It took me literally 5 hours to assemble it, but that's exactly how I was cursing, I was sweating, I was really in a very bad situation. But when I finished it, I was really proud of my creation. Why? Because I have invested some part of me in creating this. So creation and connection means do involve your students with things like active learning that they will do, offer them this opportunity and this context to be more creative and go through this process. Use ideas to write a comic strip. Imagine you are the owner of a fast food restaurant, write a menu, make a poster. Imagine you are Simon Malone, here's your case, write a comic strip of what happened, present it to the class. Any kind of intriguing task, always linked to what you teach, that could actually help students to create and connect, is towards this direction. And it can promote this idea of I'm sitting down, I'm working something, I'm creating, and at the same time, I can connect with that. The next idea is an idea that comes from marketing, actually. And you can see some of the companies that did integrate it, and actually they had a lot of success. I'm talking about Chocomice, I'm talking about M&M's, I'm talking about Sazzle, and I'm talking about, of course, about Nike. Now, all these companies did something very specific. They asked their customers to create something personal, something that has their own identity on it. And it's the very same idea that has with your kids. Those of you who have kids, obviously you love them, you adore them. But apart from that, you would be extremely angry if someone would come to you and ask you, are your kids for sale? And you would be ready to slay them, hit them, kill them, not only because you are offended, but because you feel that your kids are in a way an extension of your own identity and ownership. Okay, this is something very natural. It contains a lot of love, but it's a very, very automatic reaction to fatherhood or motherhood. Whatever, we feel that it belongs to us. This is something that, it has a part of our own identity as well. And I'm talking in ELT about personalization exercises. This is exactly what is happening every time you are asking your students to create something that has completely their own personal touch. It's like giving them the floor. It's like giving voice to their feelings, to what they want, to what they expect. A project, make your own alebrijes, for example. I don't care if it's going to be black, long, short, but make your own alebrijes. Or talk to me about your house, or talk to me, how would you like to go to this school, yes or not, spend 3 times in a topic, write a composition, or offer a small presentation. Every time you motivate your students to talk about themselves, this is an extra motive, and chances are that they're going to do it in a more eager way. It's the very same idea that I was telling you. Our brain by nature loves what is real and what is personal. And, I'm going back because here Nike Air, for example, that was a part of a shoe that sold million simply because Nike asked the consumers, the customers, to add up a stripe, a color stripe, according to the color that they wanted. And it was a huge success simply by asking this small personalization aspect, or anything that urges them to think critically, or talking about their taste. It's always this idea of personalization that makes things more interesting for our learners. And there is another idea. This idea that came from Cook, who is a very famous psychologist as well. It says the following: as high motivation can bring about successful learning may be the cause of high motivation, which means what? It's the other way around from the rewards thing. It says that, okay, you may start doing something and you may have a goal at the end of the road. Now, if you feel that you are experiencing and doing and achieving this role, or even in the process of achieving this role, this can also result in high motivation. In other words, you don't have to expect until you reach the goal. You may feel this through engagement. And it was really, really amazing that these two ladies, Caitlin Woolley and Ayelet Fischbach from the University of Chicago, those of you who are practicing and going to the gym would definitely identify. They made the gym experiment, testing exactly this very same idea. And I don't know if it has ever happened to you. Sometimes you sit by the sofa, you're watching Netflix, you're eating pizza, or you're having, your favorite drink, and you're thinking, should I go to the gym now? Or how can I possibly do that? If there was a way that I could actually, like Star Trek, being transferred through rays to the place, then maybe I would go. But now standing up from the sofa, leaving my comfort zone, I don't think I'm going to do it. So practically, if there would be a way, and when you think, sitting on the sofa, that it's not a very good idea to go to the gym, if somebody would actually grab you and throw you right inside this aerobic class or the weightlifting, your whole psychology would change. And immediately you would feel more motivated. So basically, we are not very good predictors of our motivation when we are not doing a specific task. But when we start and when we are in the midst of this task, we focus on the inherent joy of the task and we stop thinking about whatever else. We simply focus on what we are doing. So if in my classes I can try to create this moment of engagement, of having them occupied, of starting the process of them doing something, then I may aspire that I will generate this motivation as well. And I'm talking, my friends, about active learning exercises, anything that can be and can inspire a moment of engagement. And I'm not I'm not walking up on the clouds. Nothing is happening with a magic wand. The idea that I've been actually preaching about and lecturing to all the teachers in the world for the last 25 years is that you are the regulators and moderators of your class, okay? And we should be the persons who send out most of the signals. Not all of these signals would work, but you multiply the possibilities that your students will grab something and they will feel this engagement. And never give up, never being discouraged, always try. Never expect that the kids will come and tell you what they want, but they will show you what they want once you provide the appropriate signals to them. For example, here we have a reading exercise, and you go through the text, but you read about the text, you think about the text, you listen about the text, you get into this engagement. And every single task can be transferred into something, a multiple way of sending different signals, practicing different things, and maybe reach different levels of engagement. One of the last of the ideas, good relationships aren't transactional, and people are willing to invest and do more for long-term commitment relationships. And what I'm saying here is that if you want to achieve a good perspective for motivation, is that you need to show them that English will be needed for the rest of their lives. This is an idea that comes also from my neurolanguage coaching background as well, from Rachel Paling. Try to inspire that you are there as a facilitator all the time, and that you can signpost lifelong learning activities like study skills, how they study, or things that they can be helpful later on, how you make a project, how you write a composition, how you can make research on the internet about a certain topic. This can be really, really helpful for them because it provides these lifelong learning activities. And the last idea for today, the exchange of trust and goodwill is an important and inherent part of human motivation. Trust is something that we should always, it's what holds our society together. You cannot have a society without trust. Every time you go to the restaurant, you trust that the cook won't actually throw something in the food of your kids, or that the neighbor won't steal your correspondence, or that people will respect you in every possible way when people that they don't know you when you go in a certain place. So trust and goodwill is something that to automatically accept, and without it, we can't even live, in a group, let alone in a society. So this should be, in a way, cultivated in between and promoted the student and the teacher. And anything towards this objective might be useful. Activities that build trust between teacher and student. I'm here, I'm your facilitator, I'm setting up the objectives, I'm opening up my lesson, I'm explaining to you what you are going to learn in this module, and together we're going to check at the end of the module whether these things have been achieved. It's a process again, my friends, okay? It's not simply a kind of methodology. It's a process that you are very sincere with them, and it's a call for trust, okay? Anything that facilitates their learning, or when, for example, every time, this is what I get when I try to teach them speaking or writing or any other skill, when I go hand by hand, step by step, point by point, every single time, this is when the scaffolding exercises, I cultivate their trust, and they know that I'm there for them to help them in every possible way. The same for productive skills, speaking, being there for them all the time can actually help this promotion of trust. And this is where you can find the summary of today's ideas, meaningful lessons, creation and connection, opportunities for meaningful ownership and identity, engagement, long-term commitment, and building trust are some of the ideas that I would actually promote for building motivation, maybe from a different way. And keep in mind also the 4 things that we mentioned regarding the dark side of motivation. These were what I had to share with you, my friends. I can see that we have reached 77 people. Thank you very much for this really high attendance. And I would be happy to answer any questions. I don't know if we have any time, but anyway, I'm going to give you my email in case you have any questions. I will be happy to answer them. Thanks to all of you, Vladimir, Silvana, Tanya, Mauricio, thank you so much. And thanks, Disal, for being here next to us. I don't know if I should allow a couple of minutes in case it was motivating. Thank you. You were a very motivating audience as well. Thank you, Mr. Andre. Okay, I think that was it. If there are no other questions, I gave you my email. I'm going to give it one more time. I would like to thank you once more. I would like to wish you a happy summer. I know that you are counting the days for your summer, and you know, I wish you the best of the holidays and all the, you know, let's have a great wish that this pandemic will end soon and we will be able to meet face to face together. Thanks a million to all of you, and until next time. Until then, bye-bye.